So here's the headset, cool included. Let's see what we got here. We got 1, 2, we got 3, 4, 5. We got 5 spacers. We got the lower bearing. Always nice to put your finger in there and give it a spin, make sure everything feels nice and smooth. Here's your top one. Should feel slightly resistance, have somewhat resistance. We got fresh grease. It's gonna feel like that until we break it in. Here's our bearing race. This is a crown race. It's gonna go on the fork. It's gonna complement this guy here. So it should sit right on top of there like that. And then we got our split. Actually, looks like we got, no. Take that back. This is our top cover once we go get installed on the top of the headset there. This is our crown race. This one has a split, so that'll slip on real easy. No tool involved. Because of the split, it's going to spread open. And then this is going to go on top, just on top. Once we get our steer tube in, again, this is a split. Kind of reduces the movement in here. It's going to take up the play. That goes right on top there. And then this will sit here in a very particular direction. And then we have this really thin piece of metal right there. This is most likely is going to sit quite possibly right on top of our top of our bearing, as well as the top of our split. I'll call that just a split. Some type of spacer reduces space. So this right here will ensure that we're going to hit the bearing properly and it's going to have good movement. It's not going to lag down. Sit just like that. This is an integrated or below surface headset. So we're just doing a thin layer of grease. We don't have to be, you know, Picasso, but you know, we can do this with love and you know, not too messy. Just basically do a thin surface here. And this is to ensure that the bearing is not going to get jammed in there when it's ready to come out. We're doing the bottom as well. So I like to use the finger. You can use a brush, to each their own. The rider chose to go with the new 2021 Fox, I believe it's a 2021 Fox 3.6. Very sexy, glossy black paint, 15mm through axle, nice bright orange, signature orange, glossy black paint, and with the Kashima finish on these bad boys. Nice glossy crown race. Steer tubes should come extra long. That way you can fit it to your bike, and we'll be probably making a cut on this once we find our good measurement. Going to be installing the crown race on this one. So going back to the bigger bearing, this guy right here, got a split right on the bottom. We want the angle part of the bearing to be facing up, so the flat portion of the bearing is going to sit flat. So there's a lip on this. We want this facing up. We're going to slide this on. Boom. And that's one I can just definitely push on. Okay, go ahead and slide it down. So this one you could push on. Other styles you do need a special tool. There's a park tool, obviously, and you can pound this on. But this one will press on. The more you compress it, once it's on the bike, it'll seat even better. But most of the time, your fingers can get this pretty good. So that split can be anywhere, just as long as it's nice and flush to the crown. We're all good to go. So now we're ready to install our fork. It's going to be rigging it up here. Working closer to the table, so you got all your bearings ready to go. Once you put it up, we're going to need to hold it in place. We're going to be putting the rest of our headset parts on, and then as well as our stem. So we're gonna need to have our stem ready to go. So let's get that. So we're gonna do a real thin coat of grease at the base right here. Right there where your bearing's gonna go. Then we're gonna slip the lower bearing on. And we're gonna make sure that the rest of the steer tube doesn't have any grease. If we got some grease like right up on top, we'll just go ahead and give that a wipe with that rag that's behind you. Okay, once we slide that on, we're good to go. Just gonna make contact, full nice and flush. Let's get all your pieces ready to go. So now we can go ahead and drop in our upper bearing. Again, that has a beveled edge. Beveled edge is going to be sitting down, meeting the contour, mating surfaces together inside the head tube and the bearing. Yeah, so we got...
Is it the orientation like that?
The orientation is going to go this way. So the tapered end is going to go down, and it's going to fill this gap right here, so that looseness. So we got bearing, steer tube, then we're going to go ahead and slide that on. It's going to take all that play out of the system. And it is split, so meaning that once you put more pressure on it, it's going to widen up, creating making sure everything stays in place. Then we're going to go ahead and throw that very thin washer on top. And that's going to help to make sure we get the pressure in the correct area of the bearing, still allowing the bearing to spin. Then we got this little cover, it says FSA on this guy. This may or may not have a rubber O-ring on the inside. Let me go ahead and pull that off. Light grease in there. If this one had a O-ring, we'd put a little light grease in there. And the O-ring is just to keep dust out from this area right here. So it actually sits pretty nice and flush. So at this point, we can go ahead and put your spacers. So depending on what you have, since this is being a trail bike, it's new, and this goes for any bike, maybe we want to add quite a bit of spacers, and we could always play with the height, and then once you find your height, you can go back and cut your excess of your steer tube off. So you can kind of guesstimate, or you can measure off of other bikes, as long as the head tube angle is remotely the same. So depending on what you want to do, you want to throw all of them on there?
Yeah. Usually what I saw is that lately, like most of the new bikes, they have an excess over the stem.
They have a lot?
Yeah. It's probably what they, I mean, so that they won't be cutting a lot from the I'm not sure, but I wonder.
You could, if you want to, you could put as many as possible, what would be safe. This is about approximately an inch right there, so I probably wouldn't be going too much higher than that. Okay. But say you wanted to sell this bike or sell the fork down the road, having the extra length here gives that next person a chance to maybe put this fork on a bike that might be slightly smaller. You'll still have some steer length to play with rather than cutting it too short, and it limits the options of what this fork could fit on. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and throw on the stem. Pick your orientation. It's either slammed. In this case, this is the Specialized. This looks like maybe a 50 mil or 40, something like that. We're going to put it in this orientation right there. And then what I like to do is just kind of push down on the stem, push up on the fork, and just kind of squeeze as I'm twisting and turning, doing something like this, just to make sure everything's seated or bearing seated. Barely have a crease here, very tight here. Everything looks pretty good. You could even give it a spin, make sure everything feels good. How's that feel to you? Yep. And then we're going to go ahead and lock that in place. So we're going to tighten this guy up. And just one bolt just to hold it in place, make sure everything's nice and firm.